So you are, for the record, Sheriff Lazenby.
Yeah, Tobe Lesenby.
Do you let people call you Tobe around here?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a very laid back type of individual. So,
Are you from Delphi?
uh, originally from the next county south, which is Clinton County, but ironically, my career has I've been here longer in my career versus my growing up time period in Clinton County.
How long have you been sheriff?
Since January of 2015,
Okay.
in my first term.
Um, I'm hoping you can just walk us through the particulars of this case and what we know and what can be shared at this point with the greater community and online.
Right. Yeah. Well, the Abby and Libby investigation obviously began on for us on February 13th, 2017. As I recall, that particular date, I was in attendance of a local county council meeting and was notified by one of our detectives. We have two full-time detectives with our agency. And at that stage, it was late afternoon, early evening.
Do you remember what he said when he?
At that stage, it was just simply two girls that were out on the trails and they were having difficulty in locating them. So it was initially developing into a missing persons type investigation.
What was your first hunch when you heard that there were two girls missing on the trails?
As this will refer back to or come back around when we move forward with this, but I've been with our agency for 32 years, and so we have prided ourselves not only as an agency but as a community in being able to locate either missing people or even runaways in our county. I mean, I would go as far as to say our clearance rate, if you will, percentage-wise, was probably 90 to 95%.
Wow.
And so my initial thoughts were that, we'll find them. We'll definitely find them and everything will be okay.
Do you think maybe they just got lost at that point?
I think there was that part of the thought process, yes, that maybe they were lost. Obviously, the concern began to mount with that time of year. The days were shorter, and so it was becoming darker sooner in the day. And so anyway, once I completed, well, I actually left the meeting early, and then many community members, and in essence, that's when the search groups developed and went out and began searching the last area where the girls had been seen.
Were you out there personally walking?
I was not. I was part of the coordination efforts.
Okay.
Actually, we were based out of the local. At the time, they were in the old fire department here in Delphi. So,
Is that where the command center is now?
Yeah, same
Okay.
building. Yeah. So yeah.
When did it go from missing persons to the feeling that this was something
Right.
more?
Obviously, I think the next day when the girls' bodies were found.
Did you have did somebody get the Snapchat before then? Were you able to see these pictures and video before the bodies were found?
If I recall correctly, no.
Okay.
Those items were recovered after the fact.
Okay. So when were the bodies discovered?
It was the next day, as I recall, on Valentine's Day on February 14th.
Morning, afternoon?
I believe, as I recall, would have been late morning. One of the things that sticks out in my mind is, as police and emergency response administrators, when we received that call from one of the search parties during that time period. You could have literally heard a pin drop in that room.
Sure.
Because that was definitely not the outcome we anticipated.
So it was one of the search teams that found the girls. Sorry.
All right.
Is that your phone or my phone?
I think it's yours. I have mine muted.
Okay. Tell me about this area where they were found. It's a public trail, and at the time people could go back there all the way to this bridge. Is this like a popular place for people to hang out and walk to? What's the deal with the bridge?
The bridge, I think, more so the attraction is if you will, somewhat of the challenge in crossing it, because it is, as it's referred to, it's a high point or high bridge. So it's an extremely, I honestly can't remember the actual height of it, but I think that is the attraction, is the being able, particularly for individuals, to be able to cross from one end to the other.
Have you ever tried to cross it?
I have, and I have completed that, but this was back in the 90s when I was on the department, so it's been some time.
Was it as like a dare, or you wanted to see if you could do it?
I just wanted to go check the area, and there were other members of the department with me at the time, so
it looks frightening.
It can be very intimidating, is the word I use.
And then to think and then I imagine, a couple things on that. So trying to imagine Libby and Abby crossing that, you've got 13, 14-year-old girls, and there are gaps in that bridge. That if it I'm thinking I have a daughter who's 6, but imagining her trying to cross that just makes me sweat. But maybe they were very brave young girls.
Well, and I would just interject, obviously at certain, particularly maybe that teenage age level, there are those that have the mentality that they're 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
Right,
know?
Sure.
So
yeah, I think back on some of the things I did at that age. Yeah. But then another thing I think of is this guy that they took a picture of.
All right.
He looks pretty comfortable up there. Yeah, there's the picture. Yeah. He's got his hands in his pockets or something and walking across like it's no big deal.
Right.
Like if I was on that bridge, I'd be going like this.
Right.
Right. What is that? Do you think that tells us anything, or do you think we shouldn't read too much into that? Is he familiar with the bridge?
Right. I think even yet today that may only be an assumption. There's, in discussions we've had, there's a thought or a theory of kind of going back to, is this a local or is this from somebody out of town?
Yeah.
And even for the individual that's not familiar with the area, there's also been deeper discussion as to, would an individual go as far as to even come to our area, say 6 months prior to this, just to quote unquote study the area.
Sure.
And so possibly if that were the case, did this individual, traverse the bridge a number of times to get used to it?
Sure.
It's all speculation.
And I don't want to get too much into speculation. I want to stick to the facts here.
Sure.
But another thing is, we're talking February 13th.
Right.
This is a weird kind of day off of school. It's because they didn't have enough snow days that year,
Right.
if I understand correctly.
Right.
Who would think to even be prowling that area on that day,
Right.
in the middle of the day,
Right.
and hoping to find a kid?
Right. Yeah. Again, was it a timing issue, so to say?
Did he know that school was out?
Right. Right. All those questions.
So, what happens after the bodies are found?
Obviously, we begin our process, and as we would, being a small agency, notify Indiana State Police, mainly from the aspect of we now have a crime scene. And so notify state police for purposes of utilizing their CSI personnel. Um, and then, in essence, that's when the criminal investigation aspect of it.
Did you visit the scene?
Not, as I recall, later. I take that back. Later that same day, yes.
Were the bodies still there?
They were in the process of being removed once I had arrived.
What's the scene like? I mean, as somebody has 32 years experience.
Yeah. An initial viewing, simply a wooded, remote area of the county next to or adjacent to the Deer Creek, and so.
Was it like a clearing or a place that somebody had set up, or was it just?
It was actually a combination of some trees, obviously foliage still on the ground from the previous autumn, and just actually a somewhat of a serene area because it being in a remote section of the county.
What happened? How were they killed?
I can't go into that because of it's still part of the ongoing.
Was there anything? I mean, what was your personal? You probably have kids.
I do.
What was your personal reaction coming up to that crime scene?
How could this happen in Carroll County, Indiana, initially? Granted, we've, as I've said for a number of years, we have our share of quote unquote big city issues, but just on a smaller scale. And so, professionally, I knew we had, obviously still do, have work to do. But, again, similar to what I still hear community members say, how could this have happened?
Was it disbelief, anger?
I think all of those, yeah. How could the innocence of those young kids be taken away from them